Who are you?
Hi, I'm Althanight.
Hi, I'm Christy. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. Here I like to talk about conspiracies, controversies, cults, crimes, and pretty much anything else I like. There might be some vlogs in there might be some makeup in there, pretty much just whatever I fancy talking about or making a video on. So today we have a crime. It's kind of a crime and a controversy, and I'm not gonna lie to you, it's pretty fucking wild, and I don't think I've seen any other YouTubers covering this case before. I will just give a very quick content warning. We are going to talk about I think the only content warning for today actually is of sexual assault and of rape, so if you don't want to hear anything about that, then I would say this video is probably not for you, but you can definitely join for another video another time. So, like I said, pretty fucking wild case, and honestly, I actually thank my mum for bringing this up to me because I don't think I would have ever heard about it. I don't really consume like mainstream media, as in like the news on TV. I don't read newspapers or anything like that. I mostly get like my news, I guess, from Twitter, and like how I know about true crime stuff is probably mainly from YouTube, I suppose. But this was something that happened in Scotland, and it was on STV, Scottish Television News, and my mum was like, have you heard about this fucking Nicholas Alahverdian character? And I was like, I have not, but do tell me more. And then she did, and I was like, okay, I'm actually going to do a video on this because this is fucking insane. Let's just dive right in. So if you see me looking down, I'm just looking at my notes. It just helps me from going off and rambling. Like, my brain is like a little game of Pong in there. So boop, 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 boop. So this just helps me be able to look at my notes and kind of know what I'm going to say next. So Nicholas Alahverdian, our main character of the day, I guess you could call him, he was born on the 11th of July 1987, so he is a Gemini, and he grew up in Cranston, Rhode Island in the USA. This is where he lived with his mum and his stepdad David Rossi, who adopted him when he was 8, and that's where the name Rossi comes from. So I will refer to him as Nicholas Alahverdian and Nicholas Rossi as well. He was born Alahverdian but then became Rossi when his stepdad adopted him. His relationship with his stepfather was described as turbulent and often violent, and actually in an interview with STV News, his dad said a few things about Nicholas that are not great, don't make him sound too great. He spoke about how he was always trouble, how he would always hit and steal from his brother and sister, and he would also be incredibly violent towards his mother and his grandmother. He described him as someone who would always want control and always needed everything to be his way at all times. And then even went as far as to describe him as the devil's spawn. So obviously his stepfather doesn't think very highly of him.
He was the devil's spawn. I took a lot on. 3 kids, her. I took on what no man would, I believe.
And he says that he was like that from day one, from the very day that he met him. And so I think Nicholas would have been around 8 years old at this time. So that's some pretty strong words for an 8-year-old. Devil spawn, trouble. But we're really just getting started. It was when Nicholas was around 13 that he moved into a foster home. I don't really know why. I assume from what his stepdad says, it's to do with his behaviour, and he was kind of, I guess, like out of control, and maybe his family couldn't really look after him and needed to be put into a foster home. The foster home that he was in was a group home with other teenagers and people round about his age. I guess kids that you would describe as troubled teens, which often I don't really like saying troubled teens because you don't really know what these people have went through, and at the end of the day they really are only children, but that is how I've heard it described. But just because someone is in a group home or a foster home doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad or they're there as a result of their own actions. Oftentimes it can be actually not their fault at all, could be due to death of a parents not being able to look after. There's like millions of different reasons. Anyway, I just wanted to say that, but troubled teens is the way that it has been described. So he's 13, he's living in this foster home, and it was also round about this time that he actually got his first job, and his first job was at Rhode Island State House. This is a government building with a lot of political goings on and whatever else happens in a state house. Nicholas was mostly doing like general admin work and stuff here. I guess it was more on like if he was like a young teenager, I can imagine he wasn't doing any of the political stuff. He was probably just kind of like helping around and trying to sort his life out and get himself on a good path. So they had kind of given him a job there that he could do. He also got to work alongside politicians, which was obviously a really good opportunity for him to have at such a young age, and his ex-co-workers have described him as being persistent, as a word that kept coming up when they were asked to speak about Nicholas. He was someone who wouldn't take no for an answer and had an unusually big interest in the law for someone so young, which you actually could think who's someone who's working in like a state house or whatever isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like being persistent, not taking no for an answer is often seen as very negative things, but if that's kind of who you are as a person, I definitely think that there's a way that you can turn that round to being of advantage for you. For instance, if he was really interested in law and he was very persistent and couldn't take no for an answer, he could have definitely went on to be like a lawyer, especially because he, as you will find out, is not shy about bending the truth and very adamant on his points. So I think these traits that were originally seen as something quite negative, he could have definitely turned that around to be something positive, but people don't always do that, do they? Brian Coogan, a former state representative who worked along with Nicholas, he actually kind of took him under his wing. He took him under his wing, and at one point he actually did consider adopting Nicholas. He really felt kind of sorry for him because he had to live in this group home, and not only that, but Nicholas would also come to him often having injuries such as cuts, bruises, and said that he was being abused by the staff of the group home that he lived in. So obviously this Brian Coogan guy was feeling dead sorry for him, thought, oh, he's only a young boy and he has a lot of really good potential, so he did consider adopting him. Then I'm kind of missing a couple of little bits of information here. The way that the little mini, I guess, documentary that I watched didn't really cover this part well, but there got to a point where Brian and Nicholas were at a courthouse, and I don't really know the exact reason for it, but Brian went to the courthouse and was told by a judge that all the times that Nicholas had claimed to be abused and all the cuts and all the bruises and stuff were actually self-inflicted. They had found a nail file in his room, and the judge himself actually advised Brian not to go through with the adoption. He was like, I can't let you adopt this kid, like you really shouldn't do that. So ultimately Brian decided not to adopt Nicholas, even though Nicholas claimed that everything the judge said about him was a lie. I wish I had more information about kind of what went on here with Brian, but really his like interview clip was only like a minute or so long, so there's only so much information I can gather from that. Again, it's just, I like to kind of reflect on these things, and it is one of those points where you think, you wonder how someone's life would have perhaps turned out differently had he been adopted. But that's just maybe like an observation of mine, and just because you don't get adopted doesn't mean that you have the right to turn into a really shit, really horrible person. So Nicholas ultimately remained in foster care and lived in a group home. Now he was living in Florida, and he lived there until he turned 18. Eventually though, in his early 20s, he returned back to Rhode Island and the Rhode Island State House in a campaign to improve the children's welfare system. And he had hoped that the politicians in the State House, who he had formed good relationships with in his time when he was working there as a youth, he hoped that they would be able to back his case. Like I said, now he is in his early 20s and still claimed that the abuse that he spoke of when he was younger actually did happen. He said he actually was abused, beat, tortured, and he was denied any contact with anyone at all from outside the home. And although Nicholas claims he was abused, and I wouldn't really know either way. I would never want to say that like a victim is ultimately a liar, because, well, I really don't know. And it's one of those ones where when someone tells so many lies, it's hard to believe them, kind of like the boy who cried wolf. I think it's very unfortunate though that oftentimes when kids are in the foster care system, abuse is or can be quite prevalent. So it wouldn't surprise me if there was abuse of some sort, but it also wouldn't surprise me if Nicholas was lying, as awful as that is to say. One of the main reasons that really makes me doubt Nicholas is that in January 2008, when Nicholas Rossi was about 21 years old, so round about the same time that he was trying to advocate for victims of abuse, he himself was proved to be an abuser. While in Ohio, he approached a woman named Mary at a campus, I guess it was like a university cafeteria, and the pair got talking, and he asked if he could walk her to class, and she said yes. It was during this walk that Nicholas started to attack Mary. He was trying to force himself upon her. He was trying to kiss her and sexually touching her without her consent while he masturbated and told her, "I'm almost done, don't be a bitch," when she tried to struggle. But thankfully, Mary did manage to break free away from him, and she ran to her classroom. But when she came out of her class, he was actually waiting there for her, and he tried to convince her not to report him. He was saying that he was really sorry for what he had done, but he just couldn't help himself because she was so pretty, which is just so fucking disgusting, like burn in hell. But she did go ahead and report him, and I just want to say that was like really brave of her to actually do that. She says that she did so to break the cycle and to help protect other people from him, and that she thought about how if someone had spoke up about him, then it would have prevented what had happened to her, and she wanted to do that for someone else. She didn't want the trauma of what she went through to ever happen to anyone. So although she did say that she felt a little bit of guilt, that she was worried that she would be ruining this young guy's life, she knew that she did have to report him. A big part of the need that she felt to report him was because she felt like the attack was very premeditated. It wasn't spur of the moment. She thinks that there was something very calculated and very planned about the attack. I have a lot of sympathy for her when she says that she felt guilt towards maybe if she was ruining his life, but In my opinion, if you attack someone or try and rape or molest someone, it is not the victim who is ruining that person's life, it is the person who chose to commit that crime, and they absolutely deserve to have justice, and in my opinion, like I said, burn in hell. So Nicholas was sentenced in May of 2008, and he was found guilty of public indecency and sexual imposition, and he had to register as a sex offender every year for 15 years. Unfortunately though, this wasn't the end of the torment for Mary, because Nicholas actually tried to sue her twice for damage to his name, but both times he was unsuccessful. And a quote from Mary said, "It's kind of sick and twisted that you attack someone sexually, then you go and sue them. I thought it was dark." He even made a fake sex offender blog with a picture of Mary and put her newborn daughter on there as well. And he doxed her by pretending to be her on MySpace and put her address online and made a post pretending to be her, saying that she lied about him in court. I think you're kind of already starting to get a picture of what a horrible and dangerous man this Nicholas Alahverdian / Nicholas Rossi is. So, apart from this attack on Mary, the US authorities were originally after Nicholas for a different rape that happened in Utah. I feel like with my Glaswegian accent, I can't say Utah. Also in 2008. But since then, so the attack on Mary, the rape in Utah, he is also wanted for another rape of a different woman in Salt Lake City, and then another for the sexual assault of a woman in the city of Orem. And on top of all the sexual assault and rape allegations, there are multiple investigations going on for this man for several accounts of fraud. He has had many different aliases over the years so that he can skip around and commit rapes and fraud and then just take on a brand new identity and avoid any consequences for his actions. It's believed that he's had 16 at least different aliases.
16 aliases? No, typos.
So he has been in and out of trouble a lot. I just can't describe what a real horrible piece of shit human being this is. And you might have felt like at the beginning, oh my god, I can see outside my window like someone's pushing their like little baby who's like 1 on like a little trike, and he's wearing like a little snowsuit and he looks all fat and cute. It's the cutest thing. Anyway, yeah, so this man, awful human being. I really couldn't go into all these different cases. I just wanted to like build up a picture of what he's like. One time the police were called out to his house for a domestic assault where he left a woman, I don't know if this was his wife, one of his many wives, or girlfriend, with a black eye, bruises on her arms, neck and swelling on her face as he tried to stop her from leaving the house. In 2010, one wife actually had a restraining order against him, and the police had to initiate an arrest warrant against him for violation of a protection order because he still wouldn't leave her the fuck alone even after the restraining order was placed. And in 2015, another wife divorced him after only 7 months because he was abusive towards her as well. Brian, the guy who was going to adopt Nicholas when he was younger, but didn't. Probably he's like dodged a bullet. Brian says that he actually met Nicholas's second wife, who was, he described, lovely, salt of the earth type girl. But shortly after Nicholas and her got married, Brian received a phone call from her because Nicholas had been taking credit cards out in her name. He stole her ID, abused her, and even locked her in the bathroom. She reported that he even became incredibly violent towards her the very day that they got married, and alongside the physical violence, he controlled what she looked like, controlled what she wore, cut her off from all her family and friends, and confined her to the house, as well as threatening her with a knife. For this, the court did find him guilty of gross neglect of duty and extreme cruelty. So I can't express this enough. Real fucking piece of work. In about 2017, Rossi / Alahverdian, whatever his name is, moved to somewhere in Russia. Like, I don't know what's fucking going on anymore. This guy's all about the place. I don't know what's real. What was going on with him in this time from 2017 to 2020, but I can assume that it was some pretty messed up shit until we get to the 29th of February 2020 at only 32 years old. Nicholas Alahverdian died. Nicholas Alahverdian's battle for life ended on February 29th, 2020. The children and families in the care of the Rhode Island Department of Children, Youth and Families, for whom he inspired and led through turbulent government transgressions, have lost a warrior that fought on the front lines for 2 decades. Mr. Alahverdian died 2 months after going public with his diagnosis of Hodgkin lymphoma. He was in his 32nd year. At his bedside were Mrs. Alahverdian, their 2 children and extended family. His last words were, "Fear not and run towards the bliss of the sun." At the time of passing, the room was filled with sounds of the end credits for the 1997 film Contact by composer Alan Silvestri, a film and score which held special meaning for Mr. Alahverdian. And then everybody clapped. News of Nicholas's death caused a lot of speculation with people, including his foster mum and his biological mum, who both thought that the style of writing in the obituary was... They thought it was Nicholas. They're like, okay, that's Nicholas.
Came out. Wasn't I the first to say
Yes,
it?
you were.
What did you say?
Nick's not dead. Nick wrote his own obituary.
So the Wikipedia page on Nicholas Rossi had been edited after his death, and the image that was being used for him had been replaced with an image of another person. So not him, someone else, but they were trying to pretend that the guy who died looked like someone different. Now, what would the reason be for that? This is literally like something right out of a comedy sketch. I don't even know what to say about it. But phone calls to a local priest to arrange the funeral services and stuff. The woman making the calls claimed to be Nicholas Rossi's widow and spoke in a high-pitched fake English accent like Hyacinth Bucket from Keeping Up Appearances.
I hope you're wearing something sensible for this telephone call. Yes, it always makes me very nervous to think I might be talking to a miniskirt. Yes, I know you still have good legs, dear. I just wish you didn't wave them about so much.
So I'll leave that there for a second. In 2020, Nicholas Rossi / Alahverdian has very tragically died. What a great loss to the world. We're all devastated. And we're just going to move forward a bit to December 2021, and now we're in the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Glasgow, Scotland. This is where a man named Arthur Knight was receiving treatment for COVID-19. Arthur was an Irishman who grew up in Dublin and was an orphan who never knew his parents. He was actually born Arthur Brown, but later changed his name to Knight when he married his wife Amanda Knight. I know it's more common for a woman to change her name to the man's surname, but Arthur said that he changed his name to Knight so that he could distance himself from a traumatic childhood. I don't know too much about Arthur Knight, just that he moved from Dublin to London at the age of 15 and survived by selling books at the market and seeking educational opportunities. It was in 2012 that he met Amanda Knight, his wife, and in 2017 that their relationship became a romantic one. So they were just friends before they got married. The couple then moved from London to Bristol in England before then moving to Glasgow in Scotland, catching COVID and being hospitalised into the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. It was at the hospital that staff noticed that Arthur Knight's tattoos looked identical to the tattoos of a serial rapist, horrible piece of shit human being who was wanted for the rape of a woman in Utah in 2008. Identical tattoos to Nicholas Rossi / Alahverdian. How unfortunate for Arthur Knight that his tattoos are identical to this horrible man. What a shocking and unexpected turn of events. So the staff at the hospital called the police, and on December 13th, 2021, an arrest was made. It was confirmed that the tattoos on Knight / Rossi's arms were identical to each other, but not only were the tattoos identical, they also had the exact same scar above their eye and the exact same fingerprints. What a weird coincidence. People, including Brian, who had known Rossi from a young age and was going to adopt him, and the multiple women that he had sexually assaulted, all said that without a doubt, Arthur Knight was, you're never going to believe it, Nicholas Rossi / Alahverdian. I know. Fucking took me by surprise as well. I can't fucking believe it.
We showed Mary our coverage of the man who insists he's the victim of mistaken identity. She begs to differ.
I know it's him. He's got that dark hair and like those chubby like I would remember those like chubby fingers anywhere. You know, they were up my shirt, they were down my pants. Like I would recognize those anywhere, like his just greedy little claws.
Right. See, if this was me, I would be absolutely fucking mortified with myself. I'd be so embarrassed. I would just admit defeat. I'd slink off to jail and hope that as little people as possible noticed me. But not Arthur, of course not. Arthur doubles down. He says that he's never heard of Nicholas Alahverdian. Arthur says he's never even been to America. This is a complete and utter setup. His fingerprints were apparently taken in the hospital while he was under heavy sedation by some guy called Patrick. I don't know how this is relevant. And those very fingerprints were actually used to frame him. And the huge, recognisable tattoos, how does he explain that? Easy. While he was in a coma, suffering with COVID in the hospital, they were tattooed on him. I awoke and found what had been done to my body, and his only memory of this event was hellish visions of apocalyptic fever, which were very nightmarish. So he went into the hospital, no tattoos, untattooed man, came out the hospital, out of his coma, tattoos all over him. By the way, anytime I'm saying like a quote from him, you have to imagine him saying it in an accent that was described as all over the place between North Dublin and posh English. It's quite funny. I'm going to link the documentary that like I watched down below because this fucking guy, this fucking man was doing all that he could to stay out of prison for as long as possible. He was exaggerate. I mean, I can't say he was yeah, okay, I can. He was exaggerating how sick he was. He was saying that he was absolutely bedridden. He had to stay in hospital. And like I said, he was hospitalised for COVID in December 2021, but he was apparently fine after that. And in July of 2022, doctors, medical experts says that he had absolutely no lung problems at all, and he often faked seizures. In pictures and videos of him, you'll always see him, he's in a wheelchair, but there's a lot of questions going around as to if he actually does need the wheelchair. He's also often wearing an oxygen mask and speaks like that. You remember Malcolm in the Middle and his mate that had like really bad asthma, and he would be like, yeah, I can't believe I'm being accused. That is like exactly how this fucker speaks. Like, if you're going to lie, like, make it believable. In the August of 2022, he was convicted for threatening hospital staff and fined £400. Staff says that they feared for their safety, and when they informed Rossi that he was fit to be discharged from hospital, he jumped out of bed and ran at them. The court sheriffs stated that Rossi's claims that he couldn't stand were not credible. And so, like, Amanda Knight, this is what I wonder, what is her deal? So obviously she's married to him and she's sticking by him and she's claiming that he's Arthur Knight. When she met him, he was Arthur Brown, and that he's an Irishman and is 100% who he claims to be. But what I'm thinking is, she can't actually believe this. She must know that his story isn't true, because for one, she must know that they didn't meet in London way back in 2012, because he would still have been in America at this time, living as Nicholas Rossi / Nicholas Alahverdian. And she must know that the tattoos on his body weren't put on his body like when he was in the hospital. And I need to know what's going on with this woman, because I don't know, like, see, when you watch interviews, in a way she comes across quite genuine, and she says in a lot of her interviews, I know that my husband has absolutely no tendencies towards rape, like he absolutely would not hurt a woman, and she seems like incredibly like convinced, but again, she could just be a massive liar, or I don't know, maybe he's really manipulating her, maybe he's abusing her. Like, we just don't really know what's going on with her, like, at the moment either. But all I know is she can't possibly believe his lies.
I know my husband does not have tendencies as a rapist.
He is going to be needing a very large team on the pitch to try to say that I am a rapist.
So on November 11th, 2022, the court ruled that the man in question is in fact Nicholas Rossi. They used something called the standard balancing of possibilities, which means that one party has the burden of proof to show that they are correct, and the other party has no such burden and is presumed to be correct. So that's, like, obviously I have no, like, background in law at all, but it's like me saying to you, Evie is a German Shepherd, and you can clearly see that she's not, so you're presumed to be correct, and you know that she's a Chihuahua, and it's up to me to prove that she is in fact a German Shepherd. Otherwise, if I can't come up with that proof, then we can assume that it's not true. And in terms of this case, if Arthur Knight was really Arthur Knight and not Nicholas Rossi, then he would have the responsibility of proving that with DNA evidence, which he refused to willingly give over, and he also didn't have any forms of identification proving that he was Arthur Knight either. Have I been saying Arthur right? I think I might have been saying Arthur Wright, but it's Arthur Knight. It doesn't really fucking matter. It's not his name anyway. And I know that Arthur Knight says that he was an orphan, so if he was an orphan, he might not have access to his original birth certificate. I'm not really entirely sure how that works, but I do know that everybody is entitled to have some form of identification, and he is in his 30s, so you would think that at some point over the past 3+ decades, he would have been able to attain some kind of identification, whether that be like fucking passport, bank account, like anything like that. He must have like some form of identification, even if he didn't have his original birth certificate. So currently he is in a Scottish prison, and in March 2023 there will be a full hearing about his extradition back to the US, where he faces rape charges and sexual assault charges. However, Michelle, a 41-year-old woman from Essex in England, made claims that in 2017 she was in a 5-week abusive relationship with Nicholas Rossi when the pair met on an online dating website. So that would have been when he was fleeing from the US, because he showed up at her door with his suitcases and pretty much invited himself in to stay at her house. And during this 5-week relationship, he not only violently abused her, he raped her as well. English authorities are now in talks with Scottish authorities about having him transferred so that they can question him about this as well, because even though Scotland and England are both in the UK, we both have different legal systems, I guess. So if something happens in England, it would be the English police that would have to deal with it. So if this case goes ahead in England, he won't be extradited back to the US until any time that he's served is completed in England, first of all. So if this goes to court and he got a long time for this, then he would have to stay in England, and after he's served all those years, he would then have to go over to America, go through trial and stuff again, and serve however many years he gets there. I have no idea what will happen there, but I will definitely be following this case quite closely, and if you want me to update on this case, I'd be more than happy to do that, because I will be listening out for any updates, and in March I'll be looking into what happens at that hearing there. Here's a quote from Michelle, one of his victims, the lady who lives in Essex. I just felt completely helpless because they says I might not get a conviction because it's a he said, she said situation. But I just want him to be behind bars for the rest of his life. It doesn't matter where. I know people in America will have more evidence than me and are awaiting their own day in court. Although it would throw my own case under the bus, I feel like I want him extradited as soon as possible so that he is far away from me. That's all we have for today's video. I will just end this by saying he is scum of the earth, and I hope that he goes to jail to rot for a very, 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 very long time. But that's that. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment down below any thoughts and opinions that you have on today's video and what we were speaking about. Subscribe if you would like to see more, and enjoy the rest of your day.